Great. So before we dive in, because this is a group of folks who identify as spiritual writers, I'd like to invite us to have just a few moments of quiet. And if you have a spiritual practice, a contemplative practice that you identify with, whether that's prayer, meditation, I invite you into that. And or if you want to try square breathing, which I've been doing recently. Square breathing is you can see the diagram here. You hold your breath for 4, you inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and then hold for 4 again. So I'm just going to take 3 minutes of quiet, and you can do a practice, this one or another one that that resonates with you. So let's just enter into silence for 3 minutes. Those who are just joining, we're having about 3 minutes of centering time. And for those who are, we have about half of our time left. Just reflect on what your intentions are for this time. What brought you here? What are your intentions for this time that you're bringing to this conversation? All right, thank you all so much. That was helpful to me. I'm going to move forward with the slides. Could somebody give me a thumbs up if you can see the slides, or actually come off mute if you can't see them?
I can see them.
Great, thanks, Eric. Okay, so some of you know, as I was mentioning, as folks were coming in, my name is Kate Rademacher, and I recently assumed leadership of Writing for Your Life. Writing for Your Life was created about 7 years ago by Brian Elaine, who was the founder of the Fred Buechner Center at Princeton. And through that, he got to know a lot of spiritual writers and industry leaders and publishing experts. And he, as a very generous ministry, led conferences and workshops. And Brian and I met in 2017 when I was launching my first book, Following the Red Bird, which I'll be talking about more. And last year we had a conversation that was, I think, life-changing for both of us. And as of January, I assumed leadership of Writing for Your Life. So I'm happy to tell more about that. But Writing for Your Life is a resource center for spiritual writers. We offer online events, in-person gatherings, resources. And I know some of you are long-timers or some of you are new, so welcome. So as I've been assuming this really amazing opportunity to serve as a facilitator of Writing for Life, I've been thinking about my own writing journey and this question of what is essential. And the other day I woke up and I realized that my mind felt like, if you can see the drawing on the page of the book open from the book Essentialism, my brain felt like the scribble. I woke up one morning and I was like, my heart and mind just feels like a scribble. Like, I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what my priorities are. I'm not quite sure where God is calling me, and I just feel jumbled. And I was reminded of this book and I brought it open, and this is what helped inspire the title for this workshop. And so this is a secular book that's written sort of as a business strategy book, but I do think I'll just point your attention to this page that I copied here, which is sort of the non-essentialist versus essentialist life. And you can read through kind of what this author, Greg McCowan, says about that. I like the middle line where it says the disciplined pursuit of less pauses to discern what really matters. And that resonates deeply with me because part of my spiritual tradition in the Episcopal tradition in Christianity is discernment. And so part of what we're doing today, I think, is discerning where we're being called next. What are we being called to write, and how are we being called to share it? And I think that is one of the most important things that writers can reflect on every day. So I have three things that I've been thinking about are essential to my life as a writer, and also messages that I'd like to sort of be bringing forward as I am thinking about sort of the value proposition of Writing for Your Life and what Writing for Your Life is all about. And so for me, I'm going to, again, talk a little bit more about my bio in a minute, but some of you know that I'm married to a Buddhist and a therapist. So I'm a postulant in discernment to become a priest in the Episcopal Church, and I'm married to a Buddhist and therapist. And one thing my Buddhist therapist husband has taught me is that all of this is grist for the mill. So if we're feeling confused or angry or scared or joyful, all of this, whether we're writing or we're marketing our book or we're trying to figure out what we're being called to write next, all of this can be seen as grist for the mill as part of our spiritual practice. And that has been a big part of my journey, as I'll talk about more in a minute. The second one, and this is what I'm going to talk about most of all, is identifying your motives. People will talk about this in different ways. Mindset. A lot of writing classes will talk about the importance of getting your mindset right, understanding your goals. And so this is what I'm going to talk about a lot in my remarks today. The third one is recognizing and celebrating our blessedness. So I'd like to pause here, and I just like to invite you in the chat to think about your writing life in whatever form that takes, whether you're a grant writer or a book writer or a preacher or a podcaster or a blogger or a poet. Think about what successes have you had? And I use the word intentionally on the slide blessedness rather than success, because I do want, as spiritual writers, for us to be thinking about the ways that we are blessed by our writing life, but also the way we bless others and how we can see this as a mutual ministry. So let's take about 3 minutes to do this. Think about a way you've been blessed, either that you've been blessed or you've blessed others with your writing in the past month. And so I'll give you an example. Yes, I'm actually in Brooklyn right now, Brooklyn, New York. I live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. But on Wednesday, I met an author friend who I met through Writing for Your Life for lunch, and we really connected. And I think part of the writing life is networking and connecting with other writers and publishers, et cetera. So in the chat, just take a minute. Maybe it was, yep, that's great, Eric. Been blessed to mentor folks in their preaching lives. Thank you for that. So just jot something in. Another one for me is I've been writing poetry for the first time in my life. And I would not say that these are poems necessarily, but I have been writing poetry, and that has been a real blessing for me. So I'll put that in the chat. So just take a minute to think about that and add. That's great. Donna says, I've made new friends in a different state through my writing that I would not have met otherwise. Awesome. And just so you know, if I'm thinking about doing these workshops on a regular basis, and so this is one thing I'd like to start, I'd like to make a habit of doing, is sharing our successes. So if we do additional events like this in the future, I'd like to make this part of our regular practice so that we can be sharing successes or blessedness with each other. So Bonnie writes, I have the blessing of writing a journal article. I've also been writing poetry that people seem to find really meaningful. Awesome. Sarah writes, gave books with personal info to a friend, telling stuff I could not say. That's awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Experiencing and strengthening bonds of community through preaching and messages to group. Thanks, Tesha, for that. Awesome. All right. Anybody else want to put their blessedness on the chat? Critique partner and I, I lost it. Let me read this one aloud. From Sherry, critique partner and I are drafting a writing plan rubric to guide our writing. Awesome. That's great. I love that. Jennifer says, I'm blessed by the students I teach, the congregation I serve, and the sons I parent. Lovely. Jan says, blessed to share my writing with a critique group of spiritual women who are writing about their childhood trauma. That's really wonderful, Jan. Thank you for sharing that. Alva, inserting ethical principles into global articles and podcasts on the art industry. Awesome. That sounds great. Portia, short blog drafted, bless some folks that have a sporadic spiritual lives. Beautiful. Thank you. Glenda, what successes have I had? The devotions I write for all God's creatures have been a result of writing for life. Call out from Brian over 3 years ago. The readers connect with my situations and finding blessings in everyday occurrences. Wonderful. Teresa, a way to explore my own spirituality. Amen. Gwen says, podcast writer, weekly empowerment moments to email devotions, devotional writer. Lovely. Laura, specifically in the last month, joining online writing groups that have given me a great energy boost. I've started being active on Instagram. Wonderful. I, Gordon, blessing to reconsider scripture with new and different lens. Wonderful. All right, keep them coming. I'm going to move forward, but continue to share your successes and blessedness as you feel called. All right, so I'm going to pause here or pivot here a bit and share a little bit about my writing journey, which some of you know. So this is me and my husband in, I think, this was taken 11 years ago. So some of you know that I was raised not as a Christian. I was raised in a Unitarian Universalist community, but not as a Christian. And as I mentioned, married a man who was a very serious Buddhist practitioner and a psychotherapist. And I was kind of lost for a long time in my spiritual life. I was sort of a typical sort of spiritual but not religious seeker. And I had an unexpected and very powerful conversion experience in my early 30s. And I wrote about that in my first book, Falling Redbird, which you can see here on the right. And so I was baptized in my early 30s, and I was confirmed by Bishop Michael Curry, who at that time was the bishop of the Episcopal Church in North Carolina, now is the presiding bishop. Some of you know he preached the sermon at Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's wedding. So he's gotten he's a great guy. And this was that day. So I'd just been confirmed as in my church. And about a month after this happened is when I started to feel a call to write. I had no intention of being a writer. I have a full-time, I continued to work as a consultant. I had a full-time, very busy job as in international public health. My colleague Cindy's here. She can attest to how busy that life is, very demanding, grant writing, fundraising, trying to make a big social impact on a big scale. So I wasn't needing to be a writer. This was not my intention. And yet I just felt this undeniable call to write. And as a new Christian, I was eager to discern where I was being called and then obey the call. And so a big part of this journey for me has been obedience. And so without knowing what I was doing, I started writing. And it became clear to me that this was taking the form of a book and that I was being called to share it with the world. So fast forward about 10 years later, I've published 3 books. And again, this call to write has felt like one of the most important, meaningful ways I get in touch with my spiritual life, with where God is calling me. But honestly, I don't have a game plan. I don't have a vision of success, and I don't know where it's all heading or exactly what God has intended me. And as a type A person who in my nonprofit work, we always have an outcome in mind. We're striving for that outcome. To not really know why I'm doing this has been, unsettling at times. So for those of you who know, who've plunged into this writing life, one of the first things, if you ask somebody in the publishing industry, what is essential for any writer, including a spiritual writer, a Christian writer, or any other, religious tradition, if you're going to be writing and publishing, you will be advised that you need a platform. So for those of you who are very familiar with this world, who may be, working hard on building a platform, or who you've never, encountered this word, what I want you to do is just take a minute and write for 30 seconds every positive word you think of that comes for platform. And just in the interest of time, I'm going to give you the instructions. So take about 30 seconds and write every positive word that you can think of associated with platform. And then I'm going to have you pivot and spend 30 seconds thinking of every negative word you can think of associated with the word platform that comes to your mind. So just take about a minute, draw a line down a piece of paper, write positive words and negative words. And I'm going to ask you to share a couple of them in the chat. right, take a few more seconds. Positive words and negative words associated with this word platform. All right, great. So let's start with the positive words. Just in the interest of, again, of time, let's stick them in the chat. So can everybody just dump your positive words? Connective. Okay, great. I'll add one, community building. You can see platform as a sense of connecting to community building. Supportive, outreach, community, nice. Like-minded, okay. Share beliefs and values, great. Conductor, interesting. Reaching an audience, getting feedback, connecting with readers, foundational, interesting, yep. Outreach, awareness, visibility, springboard, relationships, friends, change agent, great. All right, so these are great words, right? Connection, partnering, love that. All right, now let's pivot and start to put in the words that you had that were negative associated with the word platform. Fake, insincere. Business, transactional, agenda, self-grandizing, persecution, time-consuming, yep, politics, boxed in, industrializing my friendships, woof, yep, vulnerable, vulnerability, wow, yeah, we got some. Solid, overwhelming, time suck, yep, taking away from what we really love, right, of writing. Okay, so this, you all are on my wavelength. This is what happened to me, right? I felt this call from God, what I understood as a call from God to write. And then I was told by everyone around me that knew something more about writing than I did, that I needed a platform. And I felt very confused and overwhelmed by that. So last night, anticipating that some people may not be familiar with this word, I just Googled it. And these are the things, I put in, what does platform mean for writers? And these were all things that came up. And I just want to draw your attention, which is the first sentence of each one. If you want to sell more books or simply get your name out there, a writer's platform is essential. Do you need an author platform? You need to have an author platform if you want to sell a lot of your books and become successful. Next, let's read the bottom one next. Platform is a turf you claim and name as your expertise of writing in your writing life, and it's everything you do to make that expertise visible. Up on the right. What is a writer platform? Writers who desire visibility in the marketplace accomplish their goals through a platform. So this is where I think I needed to do some really internal thinking about, again, my motivation. So that first sentence, writers who desire visibility in the marketplace accomplish their goals through a platform. So as a Christian writer, as a spiritual writer, am I being called to increase my visibility in the marketplace? That was not the call I felt when I started to write. When I started talking to industry people who were helping me think about how to, market my book, get a book deal, that's what they were, I think, the goal that they were striving towards was helping me increase visibility in the marketplace. But these, this language, as I was trying very hard to discern a very quiet, still small voice calling me to write, these words, these words were very triggering for me around a lot of the things I was trying to deal with in myself around why I was called to the spiritual life in the first place. And so I hope you all can still see my screen. So, at the time that I was preparing for baptism, writing my book and writing my books, I was reading and quoting authors like this one, like Henry Nouwen, who was saying, too often I looked at being relevant, popular, and powerful as ingredients for effective ministry. The truth, however, is that these are not vocations, but temptations. So on one hand, I'm sort of being schooled in the the work and the mechanics of platform building, and at the same time I'm a new enthusiastic convert who's being powerfully rocked by scripture and spiritual teachings, who are telling me to, as Henry Nouwen says, embrace a life of downward mobility. So how do these two messages, and for some people there's total congruence. They see platform building as just a natural outgrowth of their ministry. But for me, as a new writer and as a new Christian, these things were very confusing. Here's another spiritual writer. This is the 14th century Thomas à Kempis, who wrote The Inner Life, just very simply, and this is God's voice: consider whether it is my honor or self-interest that moves you most. And what was confusing again for me was as I was writing, I felt like I was really trying to connect and honor God. But then when I moved into platform building, I just, without sort of all of my own ugliness and sinfulness reared its ugly head. And I started moving back into that place of self-interest without even knowing, sort of reflexively, just without even thinking about it, wanting to be successful, to have relevance, to have a voice, to have big sales. I didn't even know. I just felt on sort of this anxious hamster wheel that this is what I was supposed to be doing. So this is my third book that came out in 2021, Reclaiming Rest. And you can see my daughter there, who was helping me with my bibliography. And I think you can, this book, Reclaiming Rest, is about Sabbath keeping, solitude, and stillness. And I love this picture because you can see the skepticism, I think, in my daughter's eyes that I needed to research and write an entire book about rest in order to perhaps get better at learning how to rest myself. And, so I'd like to hold up this example to you as we contemplate this question of what is platform building and what is essential to spiritual writers. And so again, this is all grist for the mill, right? And so let's look at this book just as a case study. So I published this book with Broadleaf Books, and I'm going to share with you some details that I wouldn't normally talk about. So I received a very small advance. This was my third book, and the first time I received an advance for a book of $3,000. I make about $1 to $2 per book in royalties, so not very much per book. And this book has sold about 1,800 copies, so 1,800. So I haven't made enough yet to earn out of my advance. So I'm still not making any revenue from book sales. So you can say on one level, is that a success? I mean, I just got a invoice or, a statement from Broadleaf, and on one level, it's kind of depressing. I mean, you can think of it anyway. Most books in the United States sell less than 1,000 copies. So was this book a success from that metric? Has it been a success financially? The book has gotten some good feedback. Bishop Michael Curry, I mentioned, blurbed it. Barbara Brown Taylor, Lauren Winner, Brian McLaren, all New York Times bestselling authors in my genre have blurbed it. I've gotten some positive feedback. So what is the metric of success? I mean, these are the questions I'm asking. I felt called to write this book. This topic was deep in my heart. Have I been successful? So here now is a new way that I'm starting to pivot and think about platform building. So I personally, again, everybody has a different story. I do not have a big platform when it comes to as a Christian writer or spiritual writer. However, I do have a pretty big platform when it comes to my work in public health. And in 2020, I was nominated for a leadership program called Women Lift Health. And through that, you can see my cohort, there's a screenshot of them. I was required to do a leadership project. Now, my writing is very religious, but I'm not able, to bring that full religiosity, that full spiritual orientation into my public health work because it's, a secular professional space. So, but I just done all this reading and thinking about reclaiming rest from a spiritual perspective. And I had to do this leadership project through this program that I was doing. And so I pivoted all that research that I was doing and ended up doing a lot of research on burnout. The World Health Organization in 2019 had just classified burnout as an occupational phenomenon for the first time. And you can see there at the upper right-hand corner, there's a lot of evidence in the peer-reviewed literature about the prevalence of burnout among healthcare workers. So there's a lot of attention being paid to this. And so I started doing, research and talking to people. And it turned out I've never been involved in anything that has gone viral. This went viral within my own organization, which had 4,000 people worldwide. Everyone around the world was deeply resonating with this idea of being burnout. Sorry for the dog in the background. So that led to several things. I contributed to a strategic plan that included prevention of burnout initiatives. I wrote a blog with a colleague from Kenya on this topic, and I was even invited to be a keynote speaker at an international Christians conference for international health, along with Pastor Rick Warren, and to speak about the topic of burnout. I never would have expected to do any of this. This was never the plan. This was never the agenda. And, I didn't really get paid for it as part of my day job. But as I was concluding this work last year, I could see how I could have leveraged this to become a consultant or an expert or a speaker on the topic of burnout, because there's a huge need and desire for this. So this, I would say, is platform building. This is community building, but it was in a way that I never expected and really was not in control of in the typical sense. So this is the last thing I'm going to share with you, I think the dense slides, but this is a colleague that I've recently connected with named Mark Grayson. He just wrote this white paper with Dr. Lemner, who you can see here. And so I just read this white paper recently and met with Mark and talked to him about it. And so he writes here, I want to read this here. Why are all the ways of perceiving and knowing our experience important? Unlike in the private sector and nonprofit world, the outcomes that we seek to materialize before our eyes in spiritual settings are not ours to control. And so for those of you who are pastors, this may sound very familiar. Unlike business, we do not seek to maximize shareholder value and increase our wealth, but we do seek to optimize use of our collective resources. And unlike the nonprofit world, we do not seek to generate the largest number of measurable social impacts, but we do seek to optimize community, large and small, and become a force for good and change in the world around us. So this is really helping me with my mindset issues around evolving from outcomes that are clear out from the outside and try to control to outcomes that I can't anticipate and can't control. And then likewise, using collective resources, including my writing and my voice, to optimize community and connectedness. And we heard that in some of the comments in the chat about the potential blessings of platform. So these are my three, for me, what are essential parts of my life as a spiritual writer right now, treating it all as part of my spiritual practice. So this confusion of what is platform and what is a trigger in me in terms of ego and self-aggrandizement, how can I turn that back as part of the very spiritual practice that I'm engaged in? How can both writing, but also marketing and thinking about marketing be seen as part of my spiritual practice? How can I then identify my conscious and unconscious motives that come up? And how can I play with this again, as part of my spiritual practice? And how can I recognize and celebrate our blessedness? And how do I really start to see my writing as a mutual ministry? It's a ministry that I benefit greatly from because I figure out my life through my writing. I get clear. I work through things that that I need to work through my writing. And then I'm learning as I share my writing more with the world, people are blessed by my words. And that's a great gift for both of us. And then, of course, repeating, because we always, I am full of sinfulness myself, and I fall off this wagon again and again, and I have to keep re-engaging with this practices. So what I'd like to ask you to do now is to spend I'm going to turn off the recording, and to take about 5 minutes of quiet time to reflect on where you are in your journey, and to write, just free associate with the paper you have, hopefully, or grab some paper if you don't, and just write what is essential in this season of your writing life. And that may be, including branching into new directions that you've never written before. That may be including some things that are related to platform building or networking or connecting to community. So I'm going to, again, stop sharing my screen and pause and give you about 5 minutes. So if you want to go off video or step away, it's 12:32. We'll step back about 12:37 Eastern time. Thank you.